Let me ask you something. When was the last time an entire opposing dugout stopped what they were doing, coaches, players, staff, and just watched? Not celebrated their own team. Not argued a call. Just watched. That moment happened. And the team doing the watching was the San Diego Padres. A man stepped to the plate in the 8th inning, with everything on the line, and hit a baseball so hard, so far, so impossibly precise, that even the people trying to beat him couldn't look away. And then, just hours later, or so it felt, that same man was standing on a mound, bases loaded, game hanging by a thread, and he reached into his arsenal and pulled out a sweeper so vicious it looked like the ball had its own opinion about where it wanted to go. Shohei Ohtani. Home run number 8. Sweeper in a crisis. And a new manager who can barely contain his excitement. This is not just a highlight reel. This is a story about what it looks like when a human being operates at a level that makes legends grateful just to have witnessed it. Let's start with that 8th home run. Because context matters here. It wasn't just the distance. It wasn't just the timing. It was the way it happened. Going into that at-bat, the opposing pitcher had been sharp. The game was tight. The crowd was loud. And the Padres, a team full of professionals who have seen everything this sport has to offer, were locked in. Then Ohtani walked to the plate. There's something that happens in a stadium when Ohtani comes up in a big spot. It's hard to explain unless you felt it. The noise changes. The attention sharpens. Even people on their phones put them down. Because somewhere in the back of every baseball fan's mind is the thought, this could be the moment. And it was. The pitch came. Ohtani read it like a sentence he had already written. His swing was not violent, it never is. It was precise. Controlled. Complete. The kind of swing that looks almost casual until the ball leaves the yard at a speed that makes your eyes question what they just processed. The Padres' dugout reaction said everything. One veteran position player was seen leaning forward, mouth slightly open. A coach turned to the person beside him and just shook his head slowly, not in frustration, but in the way you shake your head at something genuinely beautiful. There was a moment, brief but real, where the competitive instinct took a back seat to pure appreciation. Home run number 8. But the number almost doesn't matter. What matters is what it represented. This was Ohtani operating in the 8th inning, not the 3rd, not the 5th, the 8th. When fatigue should be creeping in. When pressure is at its peak. When most hitters are managing the situation, Ohtani was attacking it. That is not normal. That is not something you develop in one off-season, or 1 year, or even one career phase. That is the product of something built over a lifetime, and we'll come back to that. Now let's talk about the new manager. There's always a question when a new manager takes over a team of this caliber. Can they handle the weight of it? Can they communicate with a player who operates at a different altitude than everyone else? The answer, at least so far, is a loud and enthusiastic yes. After that home run, the manager's press conference was notable not for what he said, but for how he said it. The smile came before the words. He leaned into the microphone and spoke about Ohtani the way a fan would speak about a player they grew up watching, with genuine awe, except this man is responsible for deploying that player. There are moments, he said, where I have to remind myself to coach. He laughed after saying it. But it wasn't entirely a joke. What he understood, what any thoughtful manager must understand when working with Ohtani, is that your job is not to shape him. Your job is to protect the conditions that allow him to be himself. To schedule rest correctly. To trust the preparation. To not flinch when he says he wants the ball in a bases-loaded jam. That last point matters. Because this new manager let Ohtani stay in. He didn't go to the bullpen. He looked at his best player and said, "You've got this." And Ohtani did. Bases loaded. Late innings. Pressure so thick you could almost hear the bench coaches breathing. This is the moment most pitchers want to avoid. This is the moment that separates careers, the ones who remember it as the time they got out of it, and the ones who don't. Ohtani was not avoiding it. He was leaning into it. The sweeper he threw in that jam was not a desperation pitch. It was not a guess. It was the result of a deliberate sequence, of reading the batter, understanding what had been thrown before, and then executing something that looked, to the hitter standing in the box, like it was going one place before it went somewhere else entirely. The horizontal movement on that pitch was exceptional. But what made it truly extraordinary was the count it was thrown on, and the situation it was thrown in. Because throwing a sweeper for a strike when the bases are loaded and you need an out is one thing. Throwing a sweeper that makes a professional hitter look genuinely confused, in that moment, is something else. The catcher pumped his fist. The infielders exhaled. The manager in the dugout, the new one, the one still learning what it feels like to manage Ohtani in a crisis, allowed himself a single, quiet nod. That nod carried everything. Now here's the part of this story that doesn't make highlight reels. The part that matters most. In recent weeks, several legendary former players have spoken publicly about Ohtani. Not in the way analysts speak, breaking down spin rates and launch angles, but in a more human way. They expressed gratitude. Not respect. Not admiration. Gratitude. One Hall of Fame caliber voice put it simply, he said he was grateful to have been born in a time when he could watch Ohtani play. That he never expected to see this. That baseball, in his mind, had shown him everything, until it showed him this. Think about what it takes to move a legend to that kind of statement. These are men who played the game at the highest level. Who faced the best pitchers, hit against the best defenses, performed under pressure in front of packed stadiums. They have seen greatness up close, from both sides. And they are standing at the edge of what Ohtani does, looking in, and saying, this is different. It is different. And the reason it's different has very little to do with the home runs and the strikeouts on their own. It has everything to do with what those things mean together. No player in the modern era has dominated as both a pitcher and a hitter at this level simultaneously. Not with these numbers. Not with this consistency. Not with this efficiency. Every time baseball history suggested a ceiling for what a two-way player could be, Ohtani looked at that ceiling and kept going. What the Padres saw in that dugout, what made the veteran stop and stare, was not an accident. People close to Ohtani's preparation have spoken about the routine with a kind of reverence usually reserved for monks or elite military operators. The process begins long before the game. Long before batting practice. Long before the team bus arrives at the stadium. His study of opposing pitchers as a hitter, and opposing lineups as a pitcher, is thorough to a degree that surprises even his own coaching staff. He doesn't simply review charts. He builds mental models. He imagines scenarios, specific counts, specific situations, and runs them internally before they happen on the field. That bases-loaded sweeper? He had already thrown it in his mind before he threw it with his arm. The physical preparation matches the mental. His approach to his body, what goes in, how it recovers, when it pushes and when it rests, is treated as a system, not a lifestyle. He has spoken about adjusting his nutrition depending on whether he is pitching or hitting in a given stretch. The variables are tracked. The outputs are monitored. Nothing is left to chance. And yet, and this is what makes the legends grateful, none of it shows on his face. He does not wear the effort. He does not project the weight of being the most watched player on the planet. He just plays. Let's go back to that dugout one more time. Because there's a lesson in what the Padres were doing when they stopped to watch. In professional baseball, opponents are not supposed to admire each other in the moment. There is respect, of course. But the competitive focus is supposed to override everything else. When Ohtani hit that ball, something overrode the competitive override. That is rare. That is, arguably, unprecedented at this level of sustained performance. But here is the more important question: what does it mean for the game itself? It means something is happening right now, in this season, that people will talk about for the rest of their lives. Not just fans. Players. Coaches. The men who were in that Padres dugout will tell their kids and grandkids about the day they watched Ohtani hit his 8th home run and felt something other than frustration. They will say, "I was there." And the new manager, who is only just beginning to understand what it means to have Shohei Ohtani on his team, will someday look back at that quiet nod he gave after the sweeper, and know that was the moment he understood. So where does this go? Not just statistically. Not just in terms of wins and losses. But as a story, as something that means something beyond the box score. Ohtani has already rewritten what we thought was possible for a baseball player. The two-way experiment was supposed to be temporary. A curiosity. Something that would eventually give way to one discipline or the other. It didn't. And now we have legends expressing gratitude. Opponents pausing to watch. A new manager who has to remind himself to coach. And a sweeper in a bases-loaded jam that looked like it had been planned weeks in advance. The question isn't whether Ohtani is the best player in baseball. That conversation is largely over. The question is, are you paying close enough attention? Because this is the kind of thing that only happens once. A player who does what no one thought could be done, not for a moment, not for a season, but consistently, night after night, at-bat after at-bat, pitch after pitch, is not something the game guarantees you will ever see again. The Padres stopped to watch. The legend said thank you. Maybe we should all be a little more grateful too.